I'm so happy to be talking with a Star Wars author here today. This is Cole Horton, and he's the author or co-author of several Star Wars reference books, some of them being Star Wars, Absolutely Everything You Need to Know, Star Wars, the Visual Encyclopedia, Ultimate Star Wars, the new edition. His two most recent books are called Star Wars, Book of Lists, and Star Wars, Galaxy's Edge, Traveler's Guide to Batuu. We're going to be talking about all that today. Thank you so much for joining me, Cole.
Yeah, no, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Sure. So let's get started at the beginning. Can you tell me about what your relationship was like with Star Wars growing up? I'm assuming you were a fan.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I discovered Star Wars by accident, really before the special editions had come out. Those VHS tapes from 1995 are what did it for me.
Okay.
And it was weird. As a kid, you're into a lot of stuff, and you kind of grow out of it. But I never grew out of Star Wars, and at age 16, I had founded my small town Indiana Star Wars fan club. By 18, I had joined the 501st, and I sort of found myself doing Star Wars Celebration conventions, and one thing led to the next, and before you know it, I was writing for StarWars.com, and then eventually, writing books. And through weird kind of coincidence, my day job had even intercepted Star Wars. I've worked on games at EA for 5 years as well. So, I'd say for the past 5 years and until just recently, it was 200% Star Wars all day, all the time.
That's awesome. So those VHS tapes, those were the ones with like the half faces, like Yoda's face and then the Stormtrooper, right?
That's right. And I didn't know any better, and I bought them out of order. So I bought the one with Darth Vader on it because that looked cool. And then I bought the one with Yoda on it because or Stormtrooper, whichever one it was, but I saw Return of the Jedi before I saw The Empire Strikes Back. So, but as I don't know, and you know what? It didn't seem to hurt my fandom at all. So there's no right way to be a Star Wars fan.
I agree, and I feel like a lot of that information was out there anyway, kind of in the cultural zeitgeist. You probably absorbed, I kind of knew Darth Vader was Luke Skywalker's father already, that kind of thing. But what about Disney parks? Did you spend a lot of time in Disney parks growing up?
Growing up, we were that family that did that, kind of once in a lifetime vacation when I was younger. But my wife actually, her family, they would go almost annually. And we got married shortly after college and started making trips somewhat frequently. Star Wars weekends, of course, were a big driver for me. And just somehow, coincidentally, our trips always tended to end up there in, I guess, May. So we could do Star Wars weekends. And then, over time, we've been annual pass holders on both coasts of the domestic parks. We've lived in California. We've lived in the Midwest, and now we're in Florida. So we've always been in and around the various parks, and really in the past few years, it became really what all of our free time was doing Disney stuff. So we're DVC members, annual pass holders, Disney Visa, we do all that stuff.
Right.
Like I bet a lot of the people in your community do as well.
That's definitely true. Yeah. As you know, we're a Disney-focused news website, so that's why we wanted to have you on, because you kind of bridge that gap with the new book. You bridge the gap between Lucasfilm and Disney parks, so that's pretty cool. Let's talk about your writing career. How did you first get into that field?
I really, maybe by accident. I was a history student and sort of a historian by trade. I'm doing a lot of research and stuff, and I had started writing a series that I thought could be a book called From World War to Star Wars. And it was all the parallels and connections between Star Wars and World War II. And I was sort of in the process of making some inroads with people and pitching that when the sale of Lucasfilm to Disney occurred. And that was sort of this interesting reset period in a lot of ways. And I had all this content. I had a 60,000 word outline for what I had hoped would be a book. And that's like crazy talk. I didn't know any better. That's not really how it's done, but that's what I had. And I pitched that to StarWars.com. And thankfully, Matt Martin at the time was working there and gave me a chance and let me do monthly articles
Oh,
about
that's great.
that topic and put that content out into the world. And I did that for a few years when really the floodgates sort of opened, right? There had been all this like secrecy and quiet as everyone was just trying to figure out what the next trilogy was going to be. And all of a sudden they needed authors. And because I was writing on StarWars.com, I had separately met a number of people in the publishing world. My name got called and I somehow got my foot in the door. And then once I did that, they kept asking me back. So 13 books later, I think it is.
Wow. So let's go through some of those books. I kind of want to just mention the three that I referenced earlier. And if you could just tell me what each of these are about, like for people who don't own them already, if they wanted to go pick them up. Let's start with Star Wars, Absolutely Everything You Need to Know. What's that one?
Yeah, that one is a really dense, really more for younger audiences reference book that's just going to tell you kind of everything you need to know, whether you have some familiarity or no familiarity with Star Wars. That series kicked off in the lead up to The Force Awakens as part of the Journey 2 program. And it really was there for younger readers or parents with children to learn all the need to know facts, but also a lot of the just more fun facts. So, Gungan spit is something I had to research and really know about. All the animals and ships and everything like that.
That's awesome. So we got Star Wars, the Visual Encyclopedia. Now they've put out a bunch of these, one for like each individual film. This one, I'm assuming, covers the more broad franchise as a whole. Is that right?
Yeah. So all of these books so far have been from DK Publishing, and they're known for their visual dictionaries that come out with each film. And growing up, I was a big fan of the original visual dictionary that captured all the originals. What the Visual Encyclopedia is a way of taking everything from that universe, still very visual, as is in the name, but sort of recataloging it and pulling some of the stuff that we might have missed or not have been included before, and catalog it as if it was like a real encyclopedia, as if like all of this stuff was real and existed. So there are spreads after spreads about all the different blasters or all the different lightsabers,
right,
across the entire sort of storytelling that existed at that time. But there's also a spread in there about like luggage and art and just like everything that, if you just looked at one movie, there might not be a ton of luggage. But funny enough, as you catalog all these films, there's actually quite a bit. There's more luggage than you would think. So we get to shine a little bit of a spotlight on some of the more obscure stuff as well.
That's great. So Ultimate Star Wars New Edition. Now, I interviewed Trisha Barr yesterday. Was she the original, one of the original authors of the first edition of that book? And
she was, yeah.
You updated it? Is that what happened?
I was one of the people who updated it. So Adam Bray did so much of the heavy lifting on that, and then I came in as well. Because Ultimate Star Wars was sort of that ultimate reference book there, I guess in 2014, 2015, right? It was kind of capturing the storytelling that existed at that time. And then over the years, of course, we added a lot, right? We added multiple films from various eras. More Clone Wars storytelling had come out. Star Wars Rebels and Resistance and things like that didn't even exist. Video games. And so, it was our chance to go back and update that. On something like that, it's just hard, like knowing, like you have to make decisions about what to include, and you want to make it ultimate, right? And so you're trying to cram in as much as you possibly can. And so very dense books of real lore geeks like me. That book's like this thick. It's crazy how much is in there.
Right. Okay, I want to get into now these two most recent books, and we'll start with Book of Lists so we can finish on Traveler's Guide to Batuu. But Book of Lists is, the title is pretty self-explanatory. It's a book of 100 lists all about just listing trivia in different categories from across all of Star Wars, pretty much. Where did this idea come from, Cole?
Well, like most of the ideas, not from me. So
Okay.
I don't pitch books. Usually by the time I get contacted about them, there's already a seed of an idea there. And in the case of Book of Lists, I think there had actually been a Star Trek Book of Lists already from the same publisher group.
Okay.
So that worked. And of course, Star Wars just lends itself to something similar, right? There's so much depth there. Book of List is meant to be really fun. Like some of these reference books, they're super dense and they take themselves very seriously. And Book of List isn't necessarily that. It is meant to welcome sort of maybe a wider audience of people. It's meant to sort of sit on the coffee table and be, a little bit of a hit of trivia, pick it up. It's not really meant to be read cover to cover, although I'm sure there are some readers out there who will do that. No, it's meant to be, a kind of a quick hit, and maybe for people who are less familiar with the franchise. But we also made sure there's some stuff in there for even the most hardcore fans. So it covers everything from what you need to know kind of about Luke Skywalker and his most heroic moments, or my favorite thing that I pitched, and I thought they would tell me no, but no one did, was all the characters that Warwick Davis has played over the years in Star Wars, whose names all begin with W. That's a deep cut. So it's nice to be able to have all of that in one book.
Yeah, I was actually going to cite that list, the Warwick Davis list, as one of my favorites, but I've opened the page to one of my other favorites, which was the facial hair, the finest facial hair in the galaxy. So I really like those more like off the beat kind of lists. What are your favorite lists beyond those that we've already mentioned?
I was very happy with how the scrolls list turned out. So all the Star Wars films, they have that opening scroll that goes by, and at least the saga films. And you never really get to see them in one place, right? Because you see one and then you watch a whole movie, and then you have to go to the next movie to see it. So lining them all up in one place was pretty satisfying, right? Because you can start to see what are the similarities and differences, and what are some of the, even just the formatting things that kind of hold them together. So that's one. I love the Wilhelm screams list. So for anyone who's not familiar, there was this stock sound effect that sound designer Ben Burt was a big fan of, and it's this scream from an old Western where a character took an arrow and fell off a horse, and it's sort of once you hear it, you know it. And it got used across a number of the Star Wars films over the years, and we were able to go through and lay out all the places where that scream got used. These are just totally whimsical, weird things that normally wouldn't get the spotlight.
Yeah, and
lists.
I like what you said before about somebody being new to the franchise or to the story of Star Wars. Even like a younger kid having this book on their bedside and maybe reading a list before they go to bed every night. That would be a fun way to learn more about Star Wars. But I wanted to ask you, how do you do research for books like this? Now, I know you know a lot about Star Wars already, but are you getting the bulk of this information from what's already inside your own head? Are you surfing Wikipedia a lot? Are you, is there a database that Lucasfilm gives you to access with that kind of information?
Yeah, especially for Book of List, it was shockingly in my own head.
Okay.
At least the list and all the bullets on each list were written in a journal, kind of while I watched TV. It's just sort of how it came together. Most of it was in my head. Then there's a feedback process as well, right? So I put together the manuscript. I send that off to my editors at Becker and Mayer or Cordo. And then that goes to the editorial team at Lucasfilm, which then makes a pass through the Lucasfilm story group, where the people who kind of keep all the continuity together. And so by the time it comes back to me, there's lots of notes. And so it was actually great because I could get, the bulk of each list pretty much set out. But if I missed anything, or especially because we wrote this a year ago now, more than a year ago, anything that was for The Rise of Skywalker, at the time it didn't even have that name. Anything that was super secret, I could get little hints back notes to know, at a minimum, leave some space. As the process goes on, we're going to need to add those in there. And that's fun because, I hadn't been deeply briefed on that project yet. And so to feel like you kind of know something about the super secret film that's coming out over the holidays, that's always a good feeling.
I'm sure it is. So let's get into Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, A Traveler's Guide to Batuu. And as you can see behind me, I'm a pretty big fan of Galaxy's Edge. Spent some time there myself. But I want to ask you, you mentioned that Book of Lists had been written for about a year. So is Traveler's Guide to Batuu something that you would have started writing that long ago as well? Or is this written more recently since the land has opened?
I think I wrote Traveler's Guide before Book of Lists.
Oh, okay.
Even earlier. I wrote Traveler's Guide right around Star Wars Celebration in Chicago, which would have been April of last year, I guess. And no, the land wasn't open. So I had to put myself in the mindset of some expert who's been there dozens and it didn't exist, right? Like I think at that point, the different coasts were in different places and a lot of the concrete was still wet. So much like the other authors who are working on a lot of the other projects that were going to tie in to Galaxy's Edge, I was provided this sort of like creative guide. And it was this incredibly dense, incredibly long document that had tons of art and all the descriptions, and all of it had, kind of come out of that collaboration between Walt Disney Imagineering and Lucasfilm. And I was working off that. And the bulk of it was written before I got to go. I did get to visit Disneyland during that initial month, that sort of like preview period. I'll tell you, I was terrified because what if I had it wrong? Right. So I'm like, they had us all queued up out there and, marching us in, if you were there in that period, and
yeah,
I hope I got it right. And I'm just like turning every corner. Like, did I do it? But luckily, the resources were amazing, including, I don't know if you went to the D23 Expo, kind of the year before, and saw a giant model that they had of Galaxy's Edge. And I was actually given photography of that model. They're able to take it apart and provide me kind of like ground level images. So it was almost like someone had been into this place already and taken pictures from like where you would be. And I was able to kind of get a sense for the spacing because, I knew I had to kind of take people on a rough path, like sort of a logical path.
Yeah.
And picking, which side do you choose, knowing that one of the parks has 3 entrances and one of the parks only has 2. I had to kind of figure that out logistically and then know what came next and kind of describe it that way. I wrote it much like Rick Steves would write a travel guide. I don't know if you know Rick Steves is a public television figure and specializes in Europe. My wife and I love his stuff. And so I sort of wanted to write it that way, but there's always this logical path. And I was always afraid that I would get something out of order, like, okay, where's the milk stand? And where is that in relation to where the First Order has set up, and doing that all on paper. So that was a challenge. The good news is the lands are more similar than they are different.
Right.
In terms of especially the structures, and so there wasn't really challenges there, and it was great because I had again all the help and oversight from Imagineering and Lucasfilm, and got it largely right.
Yeah, what you were saying about hoping that you had gotten it right reminded me of when Weird Al Yankovic wrote the Saga Begins parody to the Phantom Menace, and then he said he paid to go to an early screening, like hoping that he had all the lyrics right because he was like surfing for rumors and stuff. And then he had to change a couple little lines. But yeah, I think you did a great job. So since the land has opened, how much time have you spent there?
I only went once.
Wow.
Because I was up in San Francisco that whole time. So we came down, for that preview. I, like a lot of your community, have not gotten to experience Rise of the Resistance yet.
Yeah.
But funny enough, I am largely, I guess, spoiler free on all of that. So one of the things that we wanted to do in this book is it's in Inuniverse. It's written as if somebody is there and writing this guide, and they have a point of view and they know things and don't know things. And we really wanted to make sure that the author of this didn't know and couldn't spoil some of the things that guests really just needed to experience for themselves. So we're going to talk a lot about the docking bays, and we're going to talk about the Millennium Falcon, but we're not going to talk about what happens on Smuggler's Run. That is for you to go experience. Just like we're going to hint at what's going on out in the outskirts and how there is this like maybe resistance activity, and there's sort of hushed rumors of stuff going on out there, and oh, aren't those caverns very mysterious and maybe dangerous? We're not going to take you on Rising Resistance and spoil everything you're going to see there. Nor like, is this book meant to sell you merchandise? So like, there's a catalog of merchandise in here. We talk about droids, but we don't talk about that experience exactly. And we talk about some of the more mystical elements that are going on in Batuu without spoiling what happens if you were to go inside Savi's workshop.
Right. So I have to ask you this, and I feel like it's something you might not be able to or allowed to answer, but there are hints in the book to things that we haven't yet experienced in Galaxy's Edge. One of those things is the bounty hunter Harkos, who was revealed previously in concept art. He hasn't shown up at the land yet. You also talk about the holidays on Batuu, the local holidays, like one's called Black Spire Day, which is, of course, held on May the 4th. And you also mentioned Life Day. So I'm going to phrase this question this way. Do you think that these are things that we might eventually see in Galaxy's Edge?
I think, and I don't work on Galaxy's Edge day to day, and nor can I speculate about the future.
Right.
But if anything was truly off the table, I don't know that it would have been included.
That makes sense to me, especially considering this book is coming out over a year after the land has opened. Yeah. So another question I had for you, a location like Doc Ondar's Den of Antiquities, obviously there's hundreds of Easter eggs and little references hidden all over the place. And I'm sure you got a list of what those were. How do you decide which to include and which not to include?
It's a bit of like what is important and what adds variety. You're kind of trying to strike that balance, and you're actually kind of trying to do that throughout the whole book. Because you could, like, in theory, get really deep into, I don't know, how the cues work and things like that, or like how but that's not really interesting.
Right.
And so yeah, with something like docs, you're kind of trying to pick stuff that is need to know, or maybe a lot of people might not quite know, and you want to make sure they have that information versus just what's like seem cool. Actually, on docs, that those pages, a little behind the scenes here, I actually went way too deep on docs. I had a whole crazy history for the what we know as the Ark of the Covenant that was hidden there. That one was actually pulled just because sometimes an Easter egg needs to be an Easter egg.
Yeah.
You just need to leave some surprises for people there. So, but I had talked all about its in-universe connection and how it had been seen on Ryloth and its value to the Twi'lek people and its role in the Clone Wars and all sorts of stuff. We yanked that out.
I wonder if the removal from your book of the Ark of the Covenant is related to the removal of the Ark of the Covenant from Galaxy's Edge, because it's since been taken out of the land.
Yeah, I actually think it's not related at all.
Okay.
This was even before it had likely been placed. And at the time, it was just like, hey, let an Easter egg be an Easter egg. And it was more about the surprises. So where
makes sense to me.
Why it's gone now, complete mystery to me.
I asked Matt Martin that same question, and he didn't really know either. So
yeah, in fact, it was Matt who gave the feedback of like, let an Easter egg be an Easter egg.
Sure. You mentioned earlier that your kind of in-universe persona is the author of this book, and the name of that character is a clever anagramization of your actual name in the way that they do in Star Wars. So how does it feel to have that version of yourself exist within the Star Wars canon now?
It's pretty cool. Yeah, and that's one of the things like I put in there, and you don't know if they're going to change it. Right, like, is it a little bit too on the nose? Yeah, I'm Cole Horton. The author of this book is Eloch Thrano. It's just like it's my first name, just spelled backwards, right? It's like it's kind of obvious, and they let it ride. They let it go through. There had been some precedent before. There had been a sort of map or atlas book that had come out. To his name, I actually reference him in the biography section of this book. Just as a nod, like, hey, you came first. But no, it's cool because actually, I don't know if you've played many video games over the years. Surely some people in your audience have. Star Wars Galaxies might be, my favorite video game ever. And my character name in Star Wars Galaxies all those years ago was Eloch. So it's neat to be able to pull that forward and keep that little bit of my fandom going.
That's really cool. So you haven't spent a lot of time in Galaxy's Edge, but what ended up being your favorite thing to experience there, and your favorite thing to write about, for that matter?
I had all this background information and heads up and schematics and everything, right? And then I got there and it was still cooler. like it hadn't been spoiled at all. In fact, I think I had underestimated how great it was going to be in scale and detail and just how I would feel when I was there. And one of the things kind of related to that I'm glad we made it in was, growing up as a kid, devouring all I could get my hands on for Star Wars. I loved the sort of essential guides. I don't know if you ever read those over the years. They always had those schematics, right? Those line drawings, not really blueprints, but the sort of outlines of every ship. And I really wanted those in here. And I don't know that it was ever budgeted for that. And I just sort of put it out there and kind of wrote as if we were definitely doing this, and maybe wrote them into a corner. But the editors at Cordo and everybody at Lucasfilm got behind that idea. I was able to bring my friends Chris Reif and Chris Trevison to do those blueprints, which is their specialty. And I just love those. And so much of this book is just what I liked reading as a kid. I like blueprints, so blueprints are in there. I like the sort of role-playing guides from back in the day, not because I was playing tabletop role-playing games as a 12-year-old, but because they would just give you a list of cool gear. I want a list of cool gear. Because if I'm going to Galaxy's Edge, and I in my head had sort of this thought of there's going to be families sitting around planning their trip. They're going to have this guide, and they're going to want to know who they are in this universe, and kitting themselves out and understanding what species am I going to be in, and where do I come from, what planet. The whole guide was kind of written with that in mind. And so you can kind of piece that together. I've been hearing a lot of people are excited about the maps. It was fun to get to not invent new planets. In fact, there had, thanks to the Timothy Zahn Thrawn novel that preceded this, a whole list of planets that were nearby were listed for us. But to get to create some backstories and history for nearby planets was a lot of fun. Just, one of them, it had a name, and that was it. And we asked for information, I think, from Leland Chee, who's the keeper of the holocron, all that information at Lucasfilm, and nothing came back. So I got to make it up, and I thought, okay, again, I'm at family planning my vacation. I'm going to perhaps go to the parks and stay at the resorts for a few days, but maybe we're going to take a trip to Vero Beach or to Clearwater or something, goes have a beach day too. That's what, so many families do. So I thought, we need a nearby beach planet. Because if you want to keep that alive and you want to go have a beach day in the Star Wars universe, we need a nearby beach planet. So I got to invent a planet where, it's all these white sand beaches, but it has tides so that at the end of each day, right, the tides come up and take over the whole planet. And so everybody has to live on skiffs and cool stuff like that. But again, it all came back to, families are going to be planning vacations. And I don't know, what would they need to know to immerse themselves from before they even set off for that trip and then after they get off? Because that's what I would do as a kid.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's definitely how I thought of the book as well. And I think it'll be a great guide for people planning their trips. And the last thing that I want to say about Traveler's Guide to Batuu is that when I received it in the mail, I saw that the cover is in Arabic, as I'm sure, they want to sell it in one of the shops there, probably Jules of Bith or something. But I was a tiny, tiny bit disappointed that when I opened the book, the entire interior of the book was not in Arabic. I doubt that was ever a possibility, but I would have appreciated it.
Well, I'll make a recommendation for a special edition
That would be
just for you. I don't know how many people would buy. I'd buy it. Sold at least 2. But yeah, like those are those little concessions you have to make.
Right.
But this, I mean, because we were working so closely with Imagineering and the teams there, building this place. Some of the earliest files that came through and got passed, besides the background stuff, was fonts. Like we needed to use those same kind of like Star Wars-esque, still legible in English, but those sort of Star Wars-inspired fonts throughout the book. So you see some of those on the cover as well. So even the little like paper band that's on the book was not my idea. So that was at the publisher, but brilliant. So that you have this removable band, so that if you either sell it in the parks or carry it into the parks, all that the barcode doesn't encroach on your immersion. So that attention to detail is super cool, and exactly what I would have wanted. And I think that's the sort of stuff that made this a dream job. I'm not sure how I top this as a Disney fan, as a parks fan, as a Star Wars fan and professional. No, this is better than I could have ever imagined. I don't know. In 2015, I don't think we could have imagined something like this would even exist.
That's true. And I certainly appreciated all the effort that you went through to write the book. But you may top it eventually, because you do also have more Star Wars books coming out. Later this year, you have the Star Wars book, Expand Your Knowledge of a Galaxy Far, Far Away. And this is co-written with Pablo Hidalgo and Dan Zare. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, Pablo and Dan. So guys I've known for years, had never got to work with them, but got to work on the Star Wars book. And this is another fun one, a totally different format than everything else I've worked on, and certainly these, more of a essay style, and really kind of going deep on all the key topics and picking apart some really interesting themes or things you might not think about, finding some threads that are common across a character's story or events. And just a really neat way to kind of look at the galaxy. So that'll be out, I think, this fall. I don't know. I'm the last one to know anything about when something gets published. It's because I, as the author, I turn it in. It's a Word document. It's black text on a white page, and it goes away for sometimes a few months and sometimes a year or more. And a lot of times I see it pop up on the internet, or like people like you can reach out and be like, "Hey, congratulations on your new book. Cover looks great." I have nothing to do with any of that. This is a team effort, and there's so many people behind the scenes. It's really kind of unfair that I get to put my name on it because I only did one part. And it's always fun. Yeah. So I'm excited to see that book when it comes out. And honestly, I'm excited to get my hands on Traveler's Guide. I still don't have a copy of that. You beat me my own book. Yeah, I'm jealous. So I hope you enjoy it. Mine will show up here.
I do enjoy it, and it's going to be a great guide, like I said, for anybody either planning a trip to Galaxy's Edge, or I'm sure they're going to have it on sale in Galaxy's Edge. You can pick it up there as well. But yeah, Star Wars Book of Lists and Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, a Traveler's Guide. No, I keep saying a Traveler's Guide. It's just Traveler's Guide to Batuu. Both available. Well, actually, this one's coming out on Tuesday. This one's available now. But yeah, pick them up wherever books are sold. And I want to thank Cole Horton. Thank you so much for taking out some time to chat with me today, and really appreciate it.
Anytime. I'm glad to be here. A big fan of the site. and what you guys do. So anytime, it's absolutely my pleasure.
All right. I hope to run into you someday on Batuu.
That's right. Well, till the spire.
Till the Spire. Yeah. Rising Moons and all that. Yeah. Thanks so much, Cole. Talk to you soon.